congratulations on such a fantastic film. I watched it the other night, and it's the first movie this year that's made me cry, I have to say, but congratulations on such a fantastic film.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. I
So,
appreciate that.
so I was wondering what it was about this movie that made you decide to make it, because it is one of the most powerful films I think I've seen over the years. It's right up there with movies like Trainspotting and Kids. So what was it about this movie that made you want to make it?
Well, interesting you say that. The writer actually, Mike Walsh, he actually had kids in mind
Yep.
when he wrote it, and he has a whole story about why. But he was so affected by that movie, and it made him have uncomfortable conversations with which his son,
Yep.
who was a teenager at the time, and it forced him to have conversations. I was very drawn to it. I thought the script was so powerful, and to be honest, when I finished reading the script, I was in a ball of tears as well. It presented another view of addiction, one that I have to admit I hadn't considered before. I think I was as naive as a lot of people. I think when you envision heroin addicts, you have a vision in your head of the worst possible scenario, and you don't consider that at one time they came from somewhere. They were someone's child. What was their life like before this all happened? And I was just so drawn to the idea of a different view of addiction. These two teenage girls from good homes in the suburbs, from well-meaning parents, well-meaning but busy parents, and I was really taken by that.
So,
yeah.
yeah. So did you have to do some research into heroin abuse and use with teenagers? Like, did you?
Oh, 100%. There was so much research that Mike and I, probably for 6 months to a year, we spent countless hours with recovering addicts, with families who unfortunately had lost loved ones. Most of them had lost children. And we were so affected by that. In fact, one of the young people we met with, she was 22 at the time, but her life was very parallel to Kristen. She grew up in a really nice home in the suburbs, good family, good school. She started experimenting when she was 14, I think, with marijuana, but at 16 she was a full-blown heroin addict. And so much of what you see in the film was literally plucked out of her life, because the details that she gave us, you can't make that up. You know what I mean? And there was so much detail she gave us that, cutting the bag, saving the baggies,
Yeah.
and scraping them when you're desperate, that all came from her. She told us she was a babysitter, and she, worked at a daycare when she was 17, and she was, high out of her mind most of the time. So there was and she did it in her bedroom. She went through withdrawal in her bedroom. And for 3 days, and her parents, they just thought, oh my God, she was moody. They thought she was just like, she said, she was going through a teenage girl, moody phase, and, but she did it, and it was shocking, there were just so many stories like that we just couldn't pass up. And unfortunately, so many stories revolved around Kensington, which is also in the movie, but it's one of the largest open-air drug markets in the United States. I mean, you literally drive any time of the day, and there's just drug deals happening left and right, and there's hundreds of people just on the street, and they're strung out, and it's just the saddest thing you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, that's very much like a suburb here in Melbourne called Richmond, where it's like that, and you just wonder when you go through there, like, what are the police doing in that area? Because you can literally walk from the station to a restaurant and you'll see 3 or 4 drug deals going down right in front of you, and it's just, it's so alarming.
I know, it's unbelievable. I know. I wonder.
So meeting people who had actually experienced this life, how did that impact you then when it came to casting? Because that would have been a much more personal story to you. So did that impact you when you actually came down to casting?
It did. I'll be honest with you. The story I was drawn to it because it was a great script. I was so passionate to tell such a great story, and then it became so personal. When you sit with parent after parent after parent, and they are lovely, and I mean lovely, and they're telling you the stories of their child, and their child's gone. I mean, there's just no way it's not personal. There was an 18-year-old girl at the time. We had planned a big meeting with her dad, and she was struggling. Anyway, she ended up ODing before we met the dad. It was just tragic, and so it becomes very personal. And when it came to casting, at first we thought we had to go with a name in the role of Kristen, but tell you the truth, it's amazing, but a lot of agents and managers, they won't let their clients read, even though you're talking about young actresses. I mean, it's not like you're not dealing with Meryl Streep here. I mean, some of them are on Disney Channel or Nickelodeon, but they won't let them read. And that role was just so unbelievably powerful, and there was such a responsibility to get it right and to do right by everybody who walked in this world that it was a very long casting process. But Katie Kelly, who played Kristen, she actually submitted for the role of Hannah while I was negotiating. We were negotiating with some so-called name talents for Kristen, and she came in for Hannah, and I was just blown away by her for Hannah, and I just couldn't stop thinking about her. And I found myself, I kept going back to her tape, and then she wrote me this beautiful letter, and I showed her tape to Mike, who was the writer, with a bunch of like 20 other girls. I said, tell me what you think of these girls. I didn't say anything, and next to her name, he wrote Kristen. And so I knew there was just no doubt she was our Kristen, and I felt so confident casting her. She's very special. And then once I had Kristen in place, it was about finding the right Hannah, because that chemistry would just drive the whole film.
Yeah. There were some absolutely harrowing scenes that had to be shot. What was it like on set, and how, as a director, do you then work with young actors and young actresses as they have to go through such tough emotional scenes?
Yeah, I will tell you, I'm very protective of actors. I mean, I was an actress for years, and I'm crazy nurturing. So there is a part of me that is just very protective, especially when it came to Katie and Paula, who I'm crazy close to as a result of this film. It's like we've been through a war together,
Yeah.
And they're like my little sisters, to be honest with you, and they'll tell you the same thing. But I got very close to them before filming, very close, lots of conversations, and on set we were inseparable. And I think you just build such a trust. So they trusted us, they trusted me, and they just knew I would protect them. And oddly enough, for as disturbing as so many of those scenes are, when you think about it, there's nothing physically that was compromised with them, right? So it was all emotional, even the scene in the bedroom, the rape scene. I mean, my goodness, I had two fully clothed actors in that scene, and it was shot from the neck up, but it's so emotionally gut-wrenching that, for me, it was just really constantly checking in with them, and they're both very different, and they both needed me in different ways. Paula needed me as emotional support to kind of, be by her, hold her hand, talk her through things. Katie, after I yelled cut, needed me to come up, give her a hug, and she needed to laugh and joke, and that's what she did. She went right into being silly Katie, and that's how you kind of maintain that mental health on the set and keeping everything in a good place. It's a heavy film, but we were all very much a fun kind of family.
Yeah.
I will say, and I think that's how we did pull that off.
Definitely. I also wanted to ask you about the soundtrack, because outside of working as a film journalist, I actually also work as a heavy metal music reporter. And so often in movies, when heavy music is used, they'll go and use the generic bands, or they'll use a band from like 20, 30 years ago, which of course kids these days aren't listening to. How did you go about picking the bands for the soundtrack? Because you nailed it with the bands that kids are listening to these days.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I owe all that to Alan Kovac at Better Noise. There's no doubt. He's just so brilliant. And there were some songs ahead of time I was very attached to. There was a couple very attached to. But Alan's really smart, and he watched the film, and we knew the places where we needed music, and he was just so good at knowing what songs to throw in. And then as the editor, he kind of left it up to me to kind of place them where I thought they would go. But yeah, I totally give a lot of credit to Alan on that one. Mike Walsh, the writer, is actually really good too. He found a couple really good ones from 6 a.m. that I was begging that we have in the soundtrack, like Skin and Belly and the Beast. And even though they were, I don't know, are they the songs kids are listening to? I don't know, but I love them.
Yeah.
I love those songs. So they were a couple of ours. But yeah, definitely Alan. Alan knows what he's doing.
Awesome.
Sure.
Well, I know we are running out of time, so I guess to finish up, I'd like to ask, what's it like bringing out a movie during the middle of this pandemic? Here in Victoria, we've been in lockdown now for over 200 days, so all of our videos are on demand or online. What's it been like bringing out a movie in 2020?
It's been really, it's challenging in some ways. I think some of the ways it's challenging is, to be honest, is you want to celebrate and watch the movie at a big premiere with the whole cast and the whole crew, and you want to celebrate what you worked so hard for. And in that way, it's disappointing. We had a very small COVID-safe screening with just very select cast members because it was so small. So as far as that goes, and even press, we've all been kind of doing this, right? Zooming from our homes, and we all want to be with each other and be in the room, and, we've worked hard and we want to kind of be together, and so that's hard. As far as everything else, everyone's home now, and video on demand is huge. People are watching movies at home, and what I do love about this film is I'm finding I'm contacted by so many parents who are watching it with their teens.
Yep.
And they're having discussions they probably would have never had before, because who has this discussion?
Yeah.
But the movie makes you you can't help but get into it. So in that regard, I think it's been incredibly probably a powerful way to go, to be honest with you. So, and like I said, people are home and they're looking for movies to watch and stuff. So that's okay. The whole pandemic is definitely hard on people battling addiction. Everything they tell you to do to be safe during COVID is polar opposite of what people battling addiction or any mental health. They need to have someone to reach out to, and being alone is not what they need. So that breaks my heart, to be honest with you. I wish it wasn't like that, and I hope it changes soon. But, it is what it is, right? So you make the best of it, and you keep moving forward.
Definitely. Well, Bridget, again, congratulations on making one of the most powerful movies of this year.
Thank you so much. Before I go, I did want to mention, I don't know if you're familiar with the New Zealand Breakers, the
basketball team. Yep.
Yeah. You follow? So Matt Walsh, the owner, he's an executive producer on this film.
Oh wow! No, I didn't know that. I didn't join in across.
Yeah, it's very funny. Actually, his dad is the screenwriter.
Awesome. No, I had no idea about that. So, that is absolutely amazing because, they're from New Zealand, but they actually play in our Australian NBL league. So, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I thought this is the first interview I've done in Australia, so I'm like, hey, I should probably mention that. That's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. So how did that all come about? How did Matt end up being the executive producer?
Well, oddly enough, so like I said, his dad's the writer, and so Mike was producing it, and at the time when he was looking for investors and funding, Matt stepped up right away because Matt loved the script, and Matt was like, hey, Dad, I'd really like to jump on board and help make this film, and they kind of worked together to get the funding, and after the film was made, Better Noise came along and acquired it, and then we did some additional filming just tightening up little bits and pieces. We added the soundtrack and all, and it just kind of came together that way.
Well, that's absolutely amazing. I'll let you go because I know I'm over time now, but thank you so much for chatting to us today, and again, thank you so much for making this movie because it's one of the most powerful films of this year.
Wow, Dave, thank you so much. I appreciate that. It means a lot.
Not a problem, and I can't wait to see your next film either.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, I'll let you go. Have a great night, but hopefully we get to chat again in the future.
Yeah, I hope so, Dave.
Okay, thank
Take
you.
care.
Stay safe. Bye.